Yes.
Hi, Mike Quaker with Flight Safety, who's several of us representing Flight Safety here. We've had some success over the years in promoting the training side of our business and so on to executive teams that come in Wichita, if they're here to buy an airplane or look at something, and so we have them come over and do a tour of the facility and take a course demonstration on our simulators. So we've had success that way. Is there some success stories that you can share with us that you've had to claim to gain, or what can we do, even on the flight safety level, to promote the message?
Well, I think the successes that we're seeing right now are, you know, it's very hard to measure success in a campaign where you're going, just stop picking on us, you know, and stop. Just think a little bit before you talk. That's a tough one. But where I think we're seeing is where a lot of people are trying to reference the material that we're trying to put up on the website to be able to get that word out to shareholders about the importance of the business aircraft. And if you're able to tell the story about how you use the aircraft, it makes sense to shareholders. A couple weeks ago, we had a CEO come into town, and he was asked the question by the committee he was testifying in front of him, said, did you bring your private business jet here? The exact question that was asked of the auto execs. But this CEO had an answer. And what did he say? Well, he said, we have 3 aircraft. We have analyzed, and I asked my flight department to take a look at how much I'm on that jet. And in all 3 jets together, he was on the aircraft 16% of the time. The rest of the flight hours that were flown were used by a senior management team and his product team to be able to either get product out there or to be able to make a sale or be able to go and supervise the different facilities that they had all over the country. And the corporate headquarters is in a small town. But equally important was the story of the fact that he was at a shareholder meeting that morning in Miami. He was testifying in front of Congress in the mid part of the afternoon, and he had to give a speech in Philadelphia to an aero club that evening. And there was no possible way, absolutely no possible way he could have done that through using commercial. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with our airlines. We want them to be healthy, but we all know there's just no way you can do that, especially if you're traveling to smaller markets that are not based on the hub system out there. So being able to tell CEOs or any of the corporate teams that come in to the great training that you provide them, and being able to say, hey, go to these sites, get the answers so that you can go back to the people, whether it's your shareholders or anybody else that's associated with the company, and say how you use this business jet, I think is very, very important. Anything else? Yes, sir. Hi, Bob.
Good discussion of the issues. I just want to know from your standpoint, Ed's standpoint at NDA, Craig's standpoint at ALTA, have you dove into the Bob Riley safety statistics, and in your coming to talking about the issues, just an observation, don't forget safety, because all of these issues, as you know, pale during what a couple of accidents can. So I just wanted to know, if you had a chance to look at the Riley stats, it's an alarming uptick in incidents and accidents in some of the portions of business aviation. Just wanted to know your reaction to this.
Yeah, and we're always, Bob, watching that very closely. I think that when you go and you have economic downturns and you try to look at how much people are flying, for us that are in this industry know that there is no substitute for time in the air. Time in the simulator, time in the air, that becomes very important. That becomes very costly too. And is the spike in fuel prices that really put a lot of people on the ground, did that have an effect? We don't know. And we've been asking these questions of both, primarily the FAA. The NTSB delves into a lot of the accidents, but the delay and the lag in getting a lot of the results out of the accidents, we don't have that data yet. But we're going back to the FAA and trying to have them take a look at this, and I think that becomes very important. We all know we have a very, very safe mode of transportation out there, but the more we put glass, when you look on the piston side of the house, the more you put glass in the cockpit and you give people this great, great situational awareness, we've got to make sure that we don't build in a false sense of security that says that I've got this piece of glass there that can give me godlike situational awareness, and I don't have to keep current, and I don't have to keep practicing. So that's something that we are looking at. We know that the quality of our products, the fact that most of these accidents are in the operator regime and not in the maintenance regime, is a testament to both the FAA and to the manufacturers of the type of quality of product that we're putting out right now. But we've got to make sure that the people that use these aircraft have confidence and have the proficiency to be able to use them on a routine basis. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Scott Zellmeyer with Imperial Systems. I've got a security-related question. You may or may not be familiar with the TSA's operations playbook. Have you heard of this one yet?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge or comments? It seems from everything I've read that they've skipped right over the NPRM process and they're just going straight to implementation of any Department of Transport airport. Going with things like forcing airports to require badging, background, and fingerprint checks of every pilot in every individual airport, not to push the pass. To me, this sounds like they could put up an inspection point at every interstate freeway on-ramp and do the same thing with vehicles. It's just a real abuse, it sounds like. I'm wondering, it doesn't seem to be on the national radar. I've already sent questions to our congressional delegation, and they all answered the wrong question. They said we're doing all this stuff with the large aircraft security program, and this seems to be wholly separate. They don't seem to be aware of it at all.
Yeah, and not only when you talk about the impact on badging people, but just the impact on our general aviation operations going into an airport that does have commercial service. We actually, there was, the NPRM went out, and actually it wasn't the NPRM, it was guidance that went out, and all of a sudden there was some overzealot TSA people that started restricting people's ability even to walk on a ramp if there was a commercial operation at that airport at all. So it has very great impact on general aviation. We have asked the associations that are involved in the airports to really take the lead on this, and they've been relatively aggressive. They were able to get the TSA to give us a reprieve until June to be able to try to get more fidelity on the impacts of what they're trying to do. And I think within the TSA, one of the problems was that you had multiple entities. There's a lot of stovepipes within the TSA, so they weren't talking to each other on the impact itself, and putting a lot of rigor into what the economic impact of the rules that they were making would go forward. Yesterday, the TSA got beat up over in the House by just the importance of screening all the cargo that goes on board the aircraft itself. A lot of the screening that occurs at the airport when it's small packages that have to go into the hold, that's done fairly easily through the process that we screen normal luggage. But when it comes from a third party entity and is packed in bulk to be transported, especially in some type of container and put on some of our larger aircraft, that's not being done the way Congress wants it to be done, so they're under a lot of heat there. The TSA is under an immense pressure in many, many quarters. And what we were interested in seeing is when Secretary Napolitano went down to the TSA for her first meeting. Now a new TSA administrator has not been appointed yet, but the Secretary of Homeland Security went down and talked to the employees, and she said, hey, you know, it's just not aviation that we're concerned about. And we need to take a broad brush assessment of all modes of transportation in this country and see what makes sense. And we're glad that she's doing that, because we feel that obviously transportation security in the aviation realm is very, very important, but we have got to get the TSA into this mode of rulemaking, working with industry. And exactly as you pointed out, they were not going through the process, and that's why on the large aircraft security program we're trying to make them follow a process that they can use as a template to go and use in their other regimes, because they have not done so yet. And ever since it was created, they have basically issued edicts. Now, the other mysterious hand that works behind the TSA that a lot of us don't really know all the mechanics is the Secret Service. And there's undoubtedly the Secret Service communicates with the TSA at multiple levels, and a lot of times it's my impression, this is my personal impression, that the TSA is a front for the Secret Service that wants to do certain things that may not exactly be in the economic interests of the country, but may be in the Secret Service interest for their protection of the assets they're required to protect. So we're also trying trying to peel back the onion and find out which one of these are actually coming from TSA or whether they're being generated by that other entity out there. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Pete, any movement on filling some of the critical vacancies in DOT like FAA?
Well, if you have looked at the vetting process that the administration has put forward, it's pretty extensive. When you look at it, it's daunting. Anyone that wants to stand up and do government service right now, you have to be ready for your entire life opened up and divestiture of virtually anything that could have any connection. And it's a tough time to divest. If you've got some holdings in anything that could touch where you would be a regulator of, and you have to sell those in this type of economic environment, that's a tough pill to swallow. So to find people that are willing to go into government service and then that will agree to go through this vetting process, to get through the vetting process is taking a lot longer under the restrictive ways that this administration has gone forward right now than it might have in previous time. But I think we've got to logically let the process go forward. I understand that Randy Babbitt is in that vetting process right now as FAA administrator, but if and when he emerges out of that, I do not know. Jane Garvey, it's our understanding, said she couldn't be the deputy DOT administrator, so that leaves a vacancy there that I think that they are trying to fill. We hope very much. If you look at what the Department of Transportation has on their plate, you know, the big one for them out there is highways, and it's the road infrastructure. You saw how much Secretary LaHood played a very prominent role when the President laid out the stimulus, or what we're calling now the recovery package. He played a very, very significant role because so much of that money goes into projects that are going to try to build the road infrastructure. Secretary LaHood also has to wrestle with the highway bill coming forward. So that means who he has in place, whether it's at his deputy at DOT or who he has as the FAA administrator, becomes very, very important, because he's going to have to rely heavily on that individual, because his focus is naturally going to be probably much more focused on the highways. Rail becomes very important. You know, there's a lot of dollars flowing to try to do more with Amtrak on the East Coast and do some more high-speed rail projects there. So I am concerned from a standpoint that if we don't keep the pressure on modernizing the system at this time that traffic counts have started to diminish, that we will lose energy in modernization. And if we put this thing off too much longer, and when we do eventually go into the recovery, we're going to be back in the mode where we're going to be competing for airspace, and we're going to have these long delays, and then we'll be in a crisis mode. And that's obviously not the way we want to do it. So our push is to make sure that when we get an FAA administrator in, that they go and get together with industry very, very fast and be able to talk about those big issues of modernization that we've got to keep the pressure on. It's a shame through this stimulus process that we didn't get more money for modernization. I think that's a fault of us as industry and of government, of having a very coordinated plan that we could implement right away if we got money out there. We as manufacturers have been pushing for incentivization of equipage, which we think is very important. Right now, this satellite-based system that's called ADSB, Automated Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, is going to, the ground stations are going to be fielded about 2013. But the government's not going to require mandatory equipage of the airline fleet or the general aviation fleet until 2020. Well, if we wait till 2020 for the backbone of the program, there's no way we're going to make 2025 as the time where we're going to have a new transformed system. It's just not going to happen. How can we accelerate that? By going and incentivizing equipage. And we hope that we'll be able to talk to the FAA administrator and get that person on board very quickly with that plan with industry very fast. Thanks. Anything else? Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to come and be with you. I appreciate
it. Pete, we really appreciate you being here, and we want to give you a little memento of your visit to Wichita. I know you've made lots of visits to Wichita. We probably won't give you one every time. But thanks very much for coming, and thanks for talking with us.
Appreciate it.